Jason, for a lot of us, especially here in the United States, you know when someone says to you, I'm starving, I got to eat, you don't know what starving's like.
No, they have no idea.
I can't stand when someone who has access to a grocery store says, I'm starving. Do you ever really know what it's like to go hungry, to have no food? There's a huge majority of the world that lives in legitimate fear and worry of that every single day. Am I going to have food today? Am I going to have access to a meal? You know, that system has been so unstable and fragile, which is ridiculous considering the amount of food we generate in our country alone through our own farming operations. It's ridiculous that we have such a scarcity of food going to people who really need it. And we consume so much here in the United States, way more than we need to, way more calories than we need to. So with COVID, you know, the effects weren't just people getting a virus, you know, and living or getting a virus and having, you know, some condition before and dying. I mean, that's bad. But the real thing is, what was the impact, the systemic impact? And we're always thinking in systems thinking terms of that on food. Like, that is huge. There's such a scarcity of food. And when that supply chain becomes strained, like home goods, you know, the home goods here in New Mexico can't get any new product in. If a home goods, which has really locked down on their supply chain, can't get any food in, or Walmart's slow at getting it in, imagine what it's like for people that had a 20% chance of having a meal for their day with no access to any place like that as a resource. That has just been wiped out. That sort of famine, it's not the virus that's killing people. It's the impact of the virus, not the virus itself, that is going to wipe people out for a longer period, way after that virus is actually gone. Trying to recover a system that was so fragile and it just shatters into pieces. And so when we look at our big seven, you know, not only is it a function of, you know, public health for us, but it's also a function of climate stability, where if we don't stabilize the climate, which is already stressed as is,
yes,
and it's decreasing our crop yields and increasing food scarcity, and then we couple that with a pandemic, a global health issue that then just totally tanks that system altogether, it leaves people with nothing. And this is something that really needs to be focused on. And so if we can direct efforts, and I know you're going to get into this article, if we can direct efforts with our data to talk about our consumption rates, talk about those fears, talk about where we go to actually acquire those food, get that boots on the ground research through using TARTLE as a tool to do that, and acquire it from people that are truly in that area of scarcity, that live that life of scarcity, we can begin to solve and fix this crippled system.
Yeah, and when we look at, you know, our big seven, which I'm going to shout it out real quick: climate stability, educational aspects, human rights, global peace, public health, government and corporate transparency, and economic equalization. When we look at the food chain, we look at this instability. I mean, you would love it to be anti-fragile in the sense of, oh, okay, we have COVID, that made it stronger.
It did.
And it didn't, you know, so... And there are networks, and I love this when you have it up on the screen, CGIAR. They joined forces with the World Food Program to tackle these post-pandemic hunger.
Yeah.
And some of the things that they were talking about is our big seven and how that's affecting. We mentioned the other day, it's not just climate stability, it's not just the disruption of the food. Violence plays a big role in whether you're getting food or not either.
Absolutely. If there's violence in an area, farmers aren't going to farm. You can't travel because
Right.
it's too much of a risk. It's less of a risk for you to sit there and starve temporarily than to go out there and get shot.
Yeah, and CGIAR and WFP, winner of the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize, they signed a memorandum of understanding to continue their long-standing partnership to build, and this is what I like their focus, build resilience and promote sustainable agriculture.
Yeah, resilience.
Yes.
And resilience will happen through information. Sustainable agriculture happens through information. Is really understanding what those yields need to be, what people's consumption rates are in certain areas, where things are really needed. Don't grow this, grow that. Have the people determine what their needs are.
Yeah, and they said they're going to focus on, these two organizations are going to focus on concentration on the links. So they figure out a link, like a bridge building.
Yep.
Climate change and conflict, which is the violence we talked about.
Right.
The adaptation of food systems. So how our adaptation, I mean, I think that's an important word. And then also the risk impacts on food security, which we don't think about that. Making sure that it's secure.
Yeah.
How secure is the system? Is it easy to disrupt?
Yeah, and those studies, those research studies for those links, those bridge building efforts will require data. Will require that understanding of the people that sit on both sides of those bridges, so sit on both sides of those links, and then looking for the common ground between the two. How does that adaptation work, right? So if people are evolving and they're trying to evolve this system, well, how do we adapt it properly? How do we know how those interlinks are systemically affecting one another and things outside of that? And those have to be looked at. And it would be fundamentally important that they continue to acquire that information from those individuals that are directly impacted from it.
Yeah, and the reason they collaborated together is because this COVID-19 pandemic, it's adding pressure to an already fragile food system.
And so think about it.
Before 2020 hit and COVID, it was fragile in and of itself.
But you need collaboration.
Yes.
The world has come to a point where we do have to come together to solve these things. Otherwise, you're donezo. It requires a unifying collective effort. We tout about this all the time with us coming together with our data, and now we're seeing that these really forward-thinking groups are coming together to say, we need to tackle this because I can't do it on my own. Don't be shy about asking for help. It's important, and that's what this has come down to.
Yeah, and they talked about the countries that are going to be risk of famine, and then it's going to rise, now 2021, it's going to rise to 270 million. So, whenever we're looking at...
That's almost the entire United States starving.
Yes.
The whole United States, 313 million people maybe? Starving. All of it. At the same time. Think about what that does for the person's emotional health, for the stability of that country, the erosion of those cultures. You can't... If you're worried about your access to food, you can't focus on anything else. I can't focus about a job or this sort of protection or these other things. I'm worried about just living.
Yes.
How am I supposed to care for my family if I can't even feed myself and I can't feed them? What does that do for anybody? The evolution stops at that point. So, and people are thinking, we got to focus on, big business and we got to use data to solve it. No, you need to focus on the big seven and solve that. Otherwise, you won't have a business. You won't have people to buy your goods and services.
Yeah, and in these links, the main three is conflict, climate, and hunger they identified.
Yep.
So whenever we look at, and all three of these come hand in hand, and the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, the SIPRI, they really pushing climate security, they called it.
Oh, they call it security. We call it stability.
Yeah, stability. And I like that. They said whenever we have climate change, conflict, and food security, their idea is to aim at the roles of food. So this is important. The roles of food. So I like that. I started thinking about that. What is the role of food?
Food has two fundamental roles. One is it allows the body to be energized so that people can work. That's one. So the supporting of our entire global system, people have to be fed. Otherwise, things stop. People don't drive trucks. They don't fly planes. They don't move cargo ships. They don't move the stuff off the cargo ships. Okay? And then two, food is culture. And when culture disappears, those values, history erodes. So if you think about that, what it means to be a human, what it means to share your culture, what it means to transcend borders, what it means to actually work for something, right? Things of value and working for yourself or your family, that happens with food. Food offers the availability for those things to actually occur. It's a base need. Just like oxygen, okay? You need a sustainable supply of something so that you can then work, so that you have the ability to then have an output. But you need that stream of input.
And then the roles of food, land and water systems. So we look at land and water systems, especially water. There's an issue just to get water. So
clean water.
Yeah, clean water. Yeah. So not only are we looking at how polluted is the land, how screwed up is that, well, then now we got to look at water systems because you cannot grow anything if you don't have water.
So let's think about this. We have 270 million starving people. We have a broken food supply chain system. Our climate is pissed off at us because we made a lot of mistakes. People are staring at a river, but it's filled with trash. and too many cows are taking a dump on the land, so the nitrate content's through the roof, and we can't plant there anymore. Because over here in the United States or like in Brazil, our consumption of meat is far too high. So what do you do? What do you do when you're staring in the face of oblivion, and and I call it kairosis. I still got to look that up, kairos. If you guys are looking for the Greek thing, what do you do at that point? Do you look back? It's like, no, you need to take this moment right now, and you got to use a tool that's effective for you to come together and solve this, because they're all interlinked. Not one thing is separate. We have the big 7 here for climate, for climate stability, educational access, human rights. They're all interlinked, every single one of them. But one of them is a key. One of them is a key driver, and that's your climate. If you don't have a global home to live in, you have no home. You have no food to grow anything.
It has to be a safe home.
Yeah, it has to be a safe home. Okay, it has to be a home where we accept and unify one another. A home that we respect. We respect its rivers. Its rivers are its vascular system. That's the blood that allows it to flow. What happens when you have a clogged heart? What's the number one killer across the globe, apart from food famine? Or I'll just say here in the United States.
Yeah, it's
heart disease.
Cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, it's cardiovascular disease. You're plugging up your rivers, man. You got trash in it. So what difference is it between you getting that trash inside of you in your own heart and the trash over here in, a major sacred river like in India? There's no difference. You can't grow, you can't feel good, right? Acne starts to show up. Festering boils, sickness, disease. And the earth becomes sick and diseased, but all these things that are interlinked, if we are the progenitor of that cause, we need to bring our data together collectively and be like, how do we then solve the thing we created? We created this mess. We are to blame for this. And to think you're not to blame for somebody else's death because of your overconsumption here in the United States is irrational. That is irresponsible. You have a responsibility for your life and everybody else, because we are all human beings. Regardless of race, religion, creed, background, color, doesn't matter what it is. Okay? We have to be responsible for it. And if you can start by being responsible for your environment, that will have dramatic systemic effects that will be beneficial to the 270 million people that can't find food tonight.
And whenever we look at taking that responsibility and doing something about it, and the power that people have right this moment, because they have power right this moment, and literally within 30 seconds to a minute, they can take back that power. How would they do that?
They go to TARTLE.co, they sign up, and they start populating data packets towards things they care about that directly affect them, and then share that with the world and get paid to share it.
So everyone, I want you to sign up right now. If you're concerned about the Big 7, if you're concerned about this, you go to TARTLE.co. That's tartle.co. Sign up now. Start sharing your data to save this planet.